those of us who are putting lots of time and effort into quality of service can stop eroding the value of the service that they're providing. They can stop having to drop their price again and again and again to compete against those companies who don't care about their customers, because you can tell the difference between the two.
And whether it's a server in your garage, which is still possible, or what's more likely is that you're paying WordPress.com or Bluehost or someone else to host your website for you. I think the work you're doing there to create that line for the people who are writing the laws is probably one of the most important things that are happening right now.
I'm also a firm believer that the kind of open web things that we are still doing in our environment, they're helping people build their dreams in ways that put them in the driver's seat, that let them control their brand, that let them control their destiny, and that in every small way that we have control over changes the world.
Welcome back to Impressive Hosting, where we seek to uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. I am your host, Jesse Friedman, and we are back with Christian from i2 Coalition. We were having a great conversation in the last episode about how you're helping to build an alliance to inform hosting companies of legislation that is affecting the way in which the internet is going to be created and consumed, about how hosting companies can work together. It was a fantastic conversation. We just left off in about a launch party that you're having at CloudFest. So CloudFest is an interesting conference. It's a great opportunity for hosting companies and others in the same industry to come and spend a week together at an amusement park in the middle of nowhere in Germany. Have you been going to CloudFest for a long time?
I think this might be my 12th or something like that, maybe even longer.
Yeah.
I've been going to them forever. It's honestly my favorite week of the year. I love it.
Yeah.
CloudFest is
kind
so
of a pain
weird
to get to, but then once you're there, it's all encompassing.
Well, so this is how I just try to describe it to others. For those of you who haven't been, we literally take over a theme park in, I think it's called Roost, Germany.
Yeah.
It's called Europa Park. And I don't know, they have 11, 12, 13,000 hosting and cloud professionals there. And it is so hard to get to that I think what makes it really special is that nobody's going to go because they're a dabbler in this industry, right? Anybody who takes the effort to go all the way out there, they are really in it and they really care about the industry. So when you go and you do networking, and there's got a lot of good networking, they got a lot of fun stuff, you're going to talk to somebody and they're going to have some relevance to what you do. It's not like most conferences where you get locked into a conversation with somebody and, 30 seconds later, you're like, how do I get out of this conversation?
Yeah, the only thing that I have a problem with CloudFest is fitting all the great conversations in. Every year
Exactly.
I seem to provide smaller and smaller little blocks of time so that I can get more and more meetings in, because they are so beneficial. And it's funny because I've mentioned in this just now, and I mentioned previously too, that it is kind of a pain to get to because you either need to fly into Frankfurt, Germany, or fly into Zurich, and you need to take a train or drive in. And, I might sound like I'm complaining about it, but it's actually one of my most favorite parts of the trip, because I have intentionally gotten lost going from Zurich into Roost. So I remember, actually, this was funny. The GPS on the car that I had rented would tell you what country you're in. And on my way back, I said, you know what? I'm going to turn off the GPS. I know I have my flight in about 6 hours. I have plenty of time. I'm just going to get lost. I'm just going to go find a fun town. I found this small little French village, and there was no one there. It was so quiet. And I went into this little restaurant, and I swear to God, they must have never seen someone from the States. It was such a quiet little village. They probably get no tourists. And it was this very cinematic look where these men who were sitting in this cafe were smoking cigarettes and reading the newspaper, and they all kind of at the same time bent it down and looked over their newspaper to see me standing there looking to see about getting a meal. No one spoke any English. I didn't speak any French. I ended up walking right back out of there. I was like, this is not. The owner of the restaurant, though, was so hospitable and so sweet. She came out to me. She saw me, and she put a table out on this like veranda where I got to like overlook this old church and everything else. Put a whole spread out and just fed me for like an hour. It was such a wonderful experience. But on my way back, there was this bakery my wife wanted me to go to on the border of Switzerland and France, and I couldn't find parking. And so I had to keep going through the border control over and over again. And the GPS on the car kept switching between Swiss and French and Swiss and French. And I was probably switched between those countries like 6 or 7 times just trying to find parking. But yeah, it's a fun experience. You can get totally lost there and really find, get to see more of the world, more culture and everything else. And that's coming off of a great conference where we had, probably I have like 30 meetings in a few days.
Yeah. It's such a cool part of the world. I think that French area that you're talking about that's right across the border from where we're at, I think they call it the Alsatian region. And I think that people, if you're trying to picture it, if you haven't been, it's the world of Beauty and the Beast is what it is.
That's a great way to, yeah, absolutely.
It looks like Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
And so it's so cool to be able to go to a conference and then go there. Yep.
Right. There's wonderful bridges. It's a gorgeous little small little area. But anyways, so CloudFest is fun. So if you're on the fence about going, and you want to have some serious networking opportunities, if you want to see some good sessions, I'm giving a few talks this year. You're giving a couple yourself, I think.
Yeah. I'm on stage a whole bunch of times. In addition to talking a couple of times myself, I tend to be the interviewer in a series of sessions we have on most CloudFest Thursdays, where we try to bring in sort of internet legends, people that have built the internet over the years. And so it's the Vint Cerfs of the internet, people that are in the Internet Hall of Fame, and so like traditionally I've had this role where I would go and interview with a whole bunch of them, and we've got a couple of really interesting ones this year. I think the one I'm most excited about of is like I'm going to be interviewing a guy named Dave Crocker, who is one of the couple of people that sort of invented email. And so we're going to explore like the creation of email and what the story of email is. Like, how cool is that?
That is amazing. Yeah.
But what I really wanted to highlight is that I mentioned that we are going to have a Secure Hosting Alliance launch party. And so like the number one thing I want people to take away is if you're showing up, show up early, show up on the Monday, the first day. And, on that Monday, March 17th, from 1900 to 2100 hours, we've got a launch party. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's at the Schloss Balthasar there in Europa Park. You don't need to remember it, but if you go to the I2C website, you can RSVP for it and come find us.
So you don't have to be in the Alliance to join the launch party. You just need to be at CloudFest.
Yep.
That's great.
We would love to have relevant hosting providers there.
Sure.
But no, you do not need to be a member to help us celebrate our launch.
Now, how hard is it to become a member? If I'm a small hosting company, is it an extraordinary expense? Is it going to cut into my margins? Like, how hard is this?
Well, okay. We mentioned that we're asking for contributions in order to participate. What we do is we have a tiered membership system where we have a recommended contribution based on revenue levels. And so our membership director, her name is Hillary Osborne. If you were to talk with her, Hillary at i2coalition.com, she would send you the rates and say, take a look based on what your revenue to be. You can line it up with our recommended membership level in accordance with that level of revenue. And just let us know, and we'll send you an invoice, and then you'll be considered a member once you pay. And what we do is try to create an environment in which anybody who wants to participate can participate based on the size of their company. And frankly, our thought is that, the bigger companies have more at stake so that they can afford to pay more. But the truth of the matter
Sure.
is that we're not checking anybody's
You're not looking
revenues.
into anybody's books.
We're not
Yeah.
looking at anybody's books. What we want is
Right.
participation, and so, if you put an inquiry in for membership, you're going to see a list of recommendations on what you can pay, and you fit something into your budget, and then you come work with
Yeah.
us. And I think good things come from organizations that work with us.
It's a very mutually beneficial opportunity because you strengthen the voice that you have in the acting change by having a larger group of people working with you, but also they get a lot of benefit out of it as well, and that comes with regular meetings that I've
Yeah.
participated in that are so informative and helpful in understanding what's going on and what we need to be turning our attention to. But there's also more practical things as well, right? Like there's a badge that allows you to define that you are a member, and that can help you with explaining to your customers that you're taking this stuff seriously
Yeah.
and watching out for them as well.
Yeah. In order to explain that, maybe I ought to mention that in addition to Secure Hosting Alliance having a launch party at CloudFest, we're also doing a panel. And you're going to be on that panel.
I
So
am.
thank you in advance for being on this panel. Let me read what the panel is called. It's called "Ending the Race to the Bottom: How Secure and Ethical Hosting Can Drive Trust and Profit."
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that again. How secure and ethical hosting can drive trust and profit. So I think we talked in the first part about how we were going to get together, and the plan was to collectively decide what responsible behavior means in hosting. Once we've done that, the goal is to create a trust seal, and for people to be able to, us to be able to work to make sure that people are committed to what it is we collectively decide is responsible behavior. And then once they have that, to be able to have a trust mark that they place on their website that somebody can click on, and they can find information about what promises that means they're making to their customers. Now, this stuff hasn't been built yet. We're bringing people to the table so that the industry can collectively decide what should go into it. But once it's
Right.
out there, the way that I see it, there are a lot of well-established companies who work really hard to do really right by their customers. And they're competing with fly-by-night folks who make pretty websites and resell services, maybe to make a few quick bucks and move on. And they don't have quality of service, and they haven't put time and efforts into establishing really good protocols to make sure that the customers have great experiences. And it's hard today to differentiate the two. If we as an industry sort of collectively decide what it looks like, and there are some markers to show what a customer commitment level looks like, our hope is that there's going to be less of a need to compete with those types of companies. And maybe as a result, those of us who are putting lots of time and effort into quality of service can stop eroding the value of the service that they're providing. They can stop having to drop their price again and again and again to compete against those companies who don't care about their customers, because you can tell the difference between the two.
Right. Right. A lot of the acquisition element of that business is driving those lower and lower prices, and it's got to come from somewhere. So if they're giving you unlimited websites for 99 cents a month, there's something happening there that's justifying that, right?
I've hated the word
So,
unlimited. The whole time I've been in this industry, I've hated the word unlimited.
what's funny too is if you talk to hosting companies a lot of time, even though they're selling unlimited websites, the average number of sites is usually quite small.
Yeah.
That are
Oh, yeah.
actually being implemented. So, it's another mechanism to make it seem like you're getting more and more and more. But what I think it actually does is it tends to devalue the actual individual website that you're getting out of that product.
And that has negative repercussions for the entire ecosystem if we collectively don't control the messaging around that. And we don't right now, because we don't collectively do anything in the hosting industry, or at least not much, right? So this is a real opportunity for leaders in this space to come in here and say, what does the industry think and believe?
Yeah, sure. That's great. All right, so definitely, if you're going to CloudFest, and try to come to the launch party. If you're not going to CloudFest but you're at home, go to the website that was recently launched, and it's secure. What is it again?
HostingSecurity.net.
HostingSecurity.net. Thank you very much. I'll never forget that again. And so we want to bring in, obviously, as many hosting companies as possible.
Yeah.
And that. But what about the folks at home who might be listening who aren't a hosting company? If you're running an agency or a website, these are maybe the citizens of the internet who are building on the internet and using these hosting companies to run their businesses, or express their voice, or whatever it might be. If they have concerns, if they want hosting companies to do different things, do things better, is there a way for them to communicate and share their ideas?
Well, so I'm going to answer the question in two different ways. I'm going to up-level things to the ecosystem. The ecosystem that I2 Coalition supports is actually very similar to the one that the Secure Hosting Alliance supports. It's the internet's infrastructure. And so if you're a part of the infrastructure, if you provide services to, or you are in some ways adjacent to the ecosystem of the hoster, we still want you to be a part of this community. There's still a role for you. In fact, we've got a few companies that are a part of the Secure Hosting Alliance that don't actually provide web hosting themselves. Now, they don't have a vote when it comes to deciding what the ultimate principles that hosts hold themselves accountable for are going to be, because there's no reason why anybody who's not a host should be able to subject a host to a set of principles. But they can speak, and they can be a part of the conversation that happens. So you can join as a member if you're a company who's a part of the general ecosystem, and you don't need to specifically be a hoster. When it comes to internet users, I'm eager to find ways that we can take the things that we're doing and find opportunities to get more user feedback. Let me give you an example of something that I2 Coalition, sort of the parent organization of Secure Hosting Alliance, did on another project. So we've got another subgroup of I2 Coalition called the VPN Trust Alliance. And the VPN Trust Alliance, in many ways, was sort of the template for what it is we're trying to do with the Secure Hosting Alliance. A lot of the major VPN companies of the world got together, and they decided that they needed a set of principles for a very similar way. And they're a little bit further down the road than the hosting providers are. In fact, you can go to vpntrust.net and you can find out what their principles already are, because they've already gone out there and published them. They've already got their own trust seal. But what they did after they came out with their principles was they put them out for public comment. And maybe that's what the hosters do. We don't know yet, because, we haven't got the right people at the table, that we haven't advanced the conversation enough, and we'll still see. But the VPN companies said, we think these are right, but do our users think that these are right? Are these fair? Or should we take further feedback from the rest of the people who matter to us? And do that? Are they going to hold us accountable, and they're going to make us want to go further? And we made a whole bunch of tweaks to the principles that the VPNs put forward after they got a whole bunch of user feedback.
Yeah, that's great. Long ago, I worked in the car dealership industry. I was building websites for car dealers. Actually, one of the reasons that I got into business eventually was because Matt Mullenweg, my CEO, the co-founder of WordPress, I came into Automatic as a developer, but he saw that I had skills in business. And one day he basically just kind of moved me into the business division at Automatic. This is like 8 years ago.
Nice.
And I think honestly, I put a lot of that into, if I could sell to a car dealer, a salesman, I could probably sell to anybody, you know? But one of the things that I learned about the way in which that industry runs is that manufacturers, Ford, Chevy, Honda, whatever, they communicate directly with end customers through these dealers, and they share, marketing funds, or give them referrals or whatever it might
Yeah.
be, based on the scores that the end customers give directly to the manufacturer. So I wonder if there's something there where the Secure Hosting Alliance might be able to, using the hosts in the alliance, could communicate directly to end customers back to the Secure Hosting Alliance, and give them the opportunity to fill out a survey or a form and ask them what they care about, what they expect from a responsible, ethical hosting company.
I think that's a great idea. I think there's so many opportunities, and that's a great one, of being able to sort of collectively get feedback about what's happening in the rest of the ecosystem, and get feedback that we can use to really make things better for the hosting community and for the users of the hosting community.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a balance for you, is trying to figure out not only how you leverage the power you're going to have from a collective hosting group, but also how do you open up channels of communication to the people who are actually living and breathing on the internet. And I think a lot of this, we touched on this in the last episode, gets clouded by the actions and the decisions that social media platforms are making, because a lot of times people see that as the internet. My daughter, Alexis, I might actually do an episode on this. She showed me a video that was really targeted her generation. She's 17, where an individual who's very passionate about the open web and the old web and the weird web was describing the internet to folks. And one of the things that they had said was, these algorithmic based, super patternized websites that we call the internet, or it's not the internet. Twitter and Facebook and Instagram is where you might be spending the majority of your time, especially that generation. But there's so much more out there. There's a much bigger web out there. And I think that it's so important for us to kind of recognize that, right? Like, not only do we have, we're at a point now where it's very, very important for us to define the lines between social media, closed platforms that run on predatory algorithms, versus an open web where you have the freedom to say what you want. And the only thing that you need to do that is some help with hosting, right?
I could not agree with you more. I think you're absolutely right about all of that. To add to it, I will say that as people try to untangle some of the predatory activities that you're talking about, people being concerned about on social media, there are plenty of groups who are self-motivated to throw the open internet under the bus if we let them. Yeah. Right? And so we need this collective voice. Not only is there so much more that we can do with this collective voice, but we need it to not get thrown out of the bus, and to make sure that that resource continues to exist for your daughter and for our kids' generation, who, like, honestly, they need the open web more than they need social media. Right? We need to save that for 100%. Them, right?
Yep.
And we have templates. Your point about the auto industry, it's one of tons of mature industries that have realized that they can do more together than they can apart.
Right.
It's like, there are big problems that the industry has, and unless there's some key organizing on some important issues, they're all going to suffer, right? The whole industry is going to suffer. That's ultimately what we're doing here, right? We're trying to help the industry that we love mature, right? So that it survives.
Right, but
we're trying to help it mature so it survives.
And we need to create a defensible wall against these closed walled gardens, right? Like, it is a walled garden. Once you're in it, and it's very hard for you to get out. I mean, one of the things, not from a legal standpoint, but the things that we talk about internally, and I've been saying for a very long time, is that an end user, a brand affiliate, or someone who's running a brand or a blog or whatever it might be, they need to own their influence. And it's funny because they don't actually understand this, that
Yeah.
because they've built up a large campaign on Instagram, or they have a big Facebook page following or whatever, social media has its place. It can definitely shortcut you into communicating with end customers or end
Mhm.
users. But what is that sacrifice you're making, being beholden to an algorithm that you have no control over, that
Yeah.
you can't communicate with your audience outside of that platform? There's legislation that can change things overnight. TikTok may or may not go away. We're not sure right now, but for a
Right.
minute, it was definitely going away. But it's not just that. Like, Instagram can make a decision for any reason they feel that you are no longer going to rank inside their algorithm, that you're no longer going to show up for people. You went quiet for a month because you went on a vacation or a sabbatical or whatever it was, and now you're going to pay the price for another 6 months while you build up that audience. It's not the same way with the open web, and you have this direct connection with your customers. And if something were to happen to your hosting company, the underlying platform behind it, you have that mobility. Like, Matt talks very heavily about the importance of data liberation and the ability for WordPress to create an opportunity for you to move your website around as you need to, so that you're not losing
Yeah.
that, and overnight you're just washing away everything you've built. I mean, TikTok's a great example of this. There's so many companies out there, or people who have started a business, created an e-commerce website. They started selling products, around this following that they created on TikTok, and instantaneously overnight, the algorithm can change. People can leave malicious comments for the purpose of having
Yeah.
you downvoted, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, you've hired people, you've built a business, you started an LLC, all these things, and it's all just washed away because you have no further connection with your end customers. And we
Yeah.
watch all the time where people, like, they create a new account and they try to get people to follow their new account. And they have to try and grab people to move from one. If you are on the open web and you have subscribers to your site, your blog, your products are being
Yeah.
sold through an open platform like WordPress, you own that relationship with that customer. And that's where it's so important for us to maintain it. And that's a little bit less of a legal issue, but more of the ethical conduct of these social media platforms, that they just want control. And I think that's
Right.
left behind in a lot of people's minds. They don't recognize that.
I agree with everything you're saying. Um, I'm also a firm believer that the kind of open web things that we are still doing in our environment, they're they're helping people build their dreams, and um, in ways that put them in the driver's seat, that let them control their brand, that let them control their destiny, and that in every small way that we have control over changes the world. Uh, Back when I was running my hosting company, one of my favorite stories to tell is that we helped shepherd the early days of Etsy.
No kidding.
Our Yeah, yeah, like literally, like a guy, a sweet web designer who did some work for us on our own website named Rob Kalin was a founder of this site that he helped make because he and his friends wanted to sell their knitting projects. Um, and we watched them go from a little project that they were sort of betaing with us to one that became very quickly our biggest customer, and ultimately one that was too big to exist only on our network. And they ended up developing their own data center because they had grown so quickly. And in the meantime, like the number of small businesses that launched around the world of people who were self-employed, selling their own crafts and things like that exploded on something that like we helped birth into existence. And I'm very proud of
Right.
that. And that's the type of thing that we in this industry do for our customers every day. And it's good. We're giving good to the world. And I want to preserve that kind of ecosystem that we're providing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you think about our core mission at Automatic, it's to democratize publishing, right? It's the
Yep.
idea that anyone in the world can have a voice, can sell a product, can talk to the world, tell the world what's going on in their region of the planet. And I think that's what really the internet was made for.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't necessarily made for that, but it was definitely the hopes that we had that it would evolve into that. And for a while, it was so beautiful and wonderful. And the advent of social media definitely I think people got very excited for it. But now where we are, and the fact that the majority of traffic is funneling through these sites, I think people are just so blind to what the internet actually is and can be. Yeah, so
But
it's definitely a worthy cause you're working on there.
well, and what we're doing is we're doing the advocacy, but we're trying to sort of collectively, be a responsible voice. But in the meantime, we're trying to do it in a way that raises the bar, in a way that sort of hopefully gets the providers that are associated with it some credit for doing the good that they're doing, right? And
Yeah.
so you can see some benefit yourself, and hopefully you're also building your own business network. We are trying to build community. And so being involved with Secure Hosting Alliance gives you an opportunity to find really important business context to help your own organization grow. So come join us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. Go to hostingsecurity.net to, if you're a hosting company, to join. If you aren't a hosting company, but you have something of an opinion about this, if you want to share your ideas, please just, fill out the form. We'll figure out how to create a greater open line of communication there. And if you're going to CloudFest, don't forget the launch party. I'll be there myself on the 17th. I look forward to seeing everybody there. Christian, thank you so much for being on the episode. I'd love to have you back in the future. I feel like we could keep talking about this for hours.
Got lots of stories that I would love to come back anytime you have me.
That's awesome. Great. Well, I'll see you soon in person in Germany.
We'll raise a glass to the start of the Secure Hosting Alliance.
I love it. All right. Well, take care. And thank you, everybody, for joining.